Hi everyone, it's AJ. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome to another episode of AJ's Ranking Again. Now in this episode I'm going to be ranking every single episode of the first series of Marvel's What If. So let's talk about it. Okay, so for the past 9 weeks we've had Marvel's What If on Disney Plus. As you know, this is a series that looks at the Marvel Universe and its multiverse, offering up different story types, putting the characters in different situations and all this sort of thing. It is based on a comic book series that Marvel had done called What If, which has run, well, it came out a long time ago and it had a big run, and recently you've had sort of mini-series of it, sort of reimaginings of the comic book, so to speak. So I thought, well, I've reviewed every single episode of the series. You can go back and check that out. So why not, logically, do a ranking of all the episodes from worst to best. So that brings us to this video here, where I'm going to take a look at every episode and tell you my thoughts on them, ranking them from worst to best. Now, my ranking might upset a few people, but you've got to remember, this is a personal opinion, and that's what rankings are. And that's the fun thing about doing rankings, is that you can have a good discussion, because everyone's opinions are different. So, without wasting any more time, let's get into ranking this series. Okay, so in my 9th spot, my least favourite episode has got to go to episode 7, which is What If Thor Were an Only Child? Yes, like I said, this was the 7th episode. Now, historically, every now and then the What If comics would do a comedic issue, just to sort of lighten the tone, because the stories can get rather dark. And that's exactly what this episode is. It's a very comedic episode. Obviously, if you've seen it, you know it follows Thor. He wasn't raised with Loki as his brother, and he goes around the universe partying on different planets and, and unwillingly destroying and ruining planets, Yeah, the story is very light, or say the episode is very light on story. There is no real story. It is just literally Thor partying throughout the episode and getting into a bit of trouble with his mum, and rectifying everything. Obviously, the episode did have a final scene which led into the series finale with the Ultron stuff. But that aside, that could have been at the end of any episode. The issue I have with this episode is that it is it doesn't feel logical. It doesn't feel like it's written because they had a good story to tell. It feels like it was written and slotted in because they felt the need to have to put a comedy episode in. So, the fact that we've got to do a comedy episode came before anything else. It wasn't a case of, we've got a really good story, let's do this. It was a case of, here's a really good story, but no, we've got to do a comedy episode, so write a story that's comedic in tone. So for that reason, pretty much, this episode has got to go in that final spot. It just left you with nothing. It gave you nothing. It was just 30 minutes of introducing Thor for this party Thor for the final final episodes. Nothing more. So yeah, so 9th spot, party Thor. Okay, so that brings me to my 8th spot. Now, in my 8th spot, I'm going to have to go with episode 2 of the series, and that being What If T'Challa Became a Star-Lord. So yeah, so this is an episode, as you know, probably know, the story is that T'Challa is taken from Earth as opposed to Star-Lord, Peter Quill. Now again, this episode, it's not overly memorable in the whole grand scheme of things. I would say that the Thor episode is actually more memorable than this, but not as good as this. It's got a fantastic cast. It's great to hear Chadwick Boseman back and this sort of thing, but it's one of them episodes where you know, you start thinking about how things would progress. Why would this have happened? Surely things would have gone way more different if you picked T'Challa up. This sort of thing was going on with the episode. So yeah, so the story sort of had a lot of double crossing in it and this sort of thing. But ultimately, at the end of the day, not a very memorable episode. Not a bad episode, don't get me wrong. And none of them were truly bad or anything like this. Just not overly memorable at all. Okay, so now dropping down into 7th place, I have to put the 6th episode, which was What If Killmonger Rescued Tony Stark. Another episode that I found to be not overly memorable after watching it. So this episode saw you catch up with Tony Stark like at the beginning of the first Iron Man film. He's in that convoy and he's attacked, but he's ultimately saved by T'Challa, by Killmonger, who becomes a friend of Tony Stark's and starts working for him and calls out people that have double-crossed him and all that. But ultimately, he's got his own plan. Killmonger has his own plan, and he ends up killing Tony Stark, Rhodes, Black Panther himself, T'Challa. I think that the story done a lot of good for the character of Killmonger. He's a fantastic character anyway. I thought the animation was fantastic. But there were silly things within the episode that just didn't work for me. Silly liberties that were taken, like, you know, and I'm nitpicking here with Killmonger, you know, training with Tony, but he's wearing grenades on his belt, and this, you know, just stupid stuff. Ultimately, it's you know, Killmonger manipulating things for his own means to get to a position where he wants to be, and he sort of double crosses again. He double crosses everyone, Shield and that, to try and create a war with Wakanda, so that he gets back in to Wakanda and gets the Black Panther, the powers of the Black Panther, and this sort of thing. But ultimately, again, an episode that after a few days I couldn't really remember, and on rewatching, you know, just not a particularly strong episode. So, in my 6th spot, I have to put episode 3. What if the world lost its mightiest heroes? Yeah, so this is the episode where Tony Stark is recruiting... Sorry, Nick Fury is recruiting Tony Stark, where Tony Stark's at the beginning of Iron Man 2, where he's on the big donut ring. Tony Stark's being killed by the arc reactor. Black Widow comes in and injects him with something that's meant to stop that from killing him. And ultimately, Tony Stark dies at this point. Now, a better title for this episode, well, in my mind, the title for this episode, What If Hope Van Dyne had died while working for S.H.I.E.L.D., because ultimately that's what the twist is. That's what causes the goings on. So it was an enjoyable episode. Obviously, this is other heroes end up being killed, and you know, it's kind of like a who done it. This is a who done it episode. Ultimately, it turns out that it's the original Ant-Man. You know, Michael Douglas's character, because his daughter had died. So, yeah, it's again a decent episode, enjoyable enough. The end was great when Loki came along, and Loki sort of seemed like he took over the world, but obviously we didn't really see anything come of that at any point, even as the series went on. So yeah, so that's my sixth spot. Now, dropping down into fifth spot. These are all very good episodes, don't get me wrong, but this is where I'm going to get a lot of flack, okay? Because my fifth spot is the series finale. Yes, what if the Watcher broke his oath? Yeah, the final episode, which is the big culmination of all these episodes, the big fight with Ultron, and ultimately ending this season of Marvel's What If. Now, fantastic episode, but why have I put it in fifth place? Because there's no story. There is no story. This is much like the Infinity War, which was a fantastic film, don't get me wrong, but it's light on story. I'm not talking about that. Because I do love that film. Anyway, so this episode, this is the culmination of everything, but it's literally just action from beginning to end with no real meat on that bone. It's just them fighting Ultron and ultimately winning. They're, with a little bit double cross and all this sort of stuff. Now, I'm not knocking the episode because this is what it led up to. This is like the final act of these 9 episodes. So obviously you're going to get something grand and big. Now, when I was watching it, I felt like I was watching scenes from Infinity War, just with different characters put in place, and obviously Ultron being in place of Thanos. It felt very familiar. It felt like I'd seen it before elsewhere, just, different characters. Yeah, essentially. That's how it comes across when a hero's doing what other heroes have done and all this sort of thing. So again, like I said, I'm not knocking the episode, but I'm putting it in that fifth spot simply because it lacked any real depth of a story. Now, I know some people might put it in their first place, but really I need something to think about. I need story. Sometimes when you're just watching action and non-stop action, I do find that to be a little bit boring. So yeah, so that's my fifth spot. Now, in fourth spot, the very first episode, what if Captain Carter was the first Avenger? Now, I have a bit of bias towards this episode because I feel that the Captain America storyline and the Peggy Carter storyline, obviously that's the heart of the MCU. Captain America is one of my favourite Marvel comic book characters. Not my favourite, but one of them. He's certainly my favourite character within the MCU. And I just love these characters. I love, this story. So to get, Peggy Carter again and have her receive the serum instead of Steve Rogers. Brilliant stuff, fantastic stuff. I really enjoyed it. The episode, it's probably the episode that does the least in the whole series. It very much does sort of play Captain America, the first Avenger film, sort of almost beat for beat, just with Peggy in that spot. But this episode was trying to ease you into the series, so it wasn't giving you nothing too in-depth, too harsh, that sort of thing, too much to think about. But a very enjoyable episode. Obviously, it ends with Peggy Carter jumping forward in time, much like Steve Rogers would have done, but through different actions. So yeah, so that's my fourth spot is the Captain Carter. It's the Captain Carter episode. There you go. So now we're falling into the bottom three, my three favourite, three best. Okay, in third place, I'm going to put the What If Zombies. Yes, the zombie episode. Fantastic episode. To finally get Marvel Zombies on screen, even in animation, was brilliant. I read the Marvel Zombies comics from years ago when zombies were a big IP, a big thing, in cinema and in pop culture and all this sort of thing. So this episode for me, it was a joy to watch. I think this is the most easily digestible episode. So if you're someone who hasn't seen this series, this is probably one of the easiest episodes to watch and get into. You know, the story was fabulous. I thought the characters, the sacrifices that these characters made within the episode, I thought all that was really good. To see a Vision and what he'd done for the love of Wanda, again, brilliant stuff. Yeah, very, very good, enjoyable episode. So that's my third favourite. Now, before I get into my second two, if you are interested in seeing my thoughts further, I do do the rankings for every episode, so that gives you a bit more information on what I felt about the episode and all this sort of thing. I'm not going to give a review for every episode here within this. It's literally just my ranking. So yeah, so dropping down that second spot. Only 2 episodes left. So my second favourite episode was What If Ultron Won? Okay, yeah, this was the episode where it was the least on famous voices. It was literally just Jeremy Renner and Toby Jones. Lake Bell voicing Black Widow. This was set in a sort of post-apocalyptic future where the Ultron had taken over and all this sort of stuff. And this is where, you know, Ultron learnt about different worlds, so he could carry on to conquer them and then ultimately learn about different universes, multiverses. So, and Ultron became aware of the Watcher. Ultron got into a conflict with the Watcher. You saw the Watcher for what he was and the power that he actually holds himself as a godlike being. So yeah, very fantastic episode, and you know, very dark. This is sort of like what the Age of Ultron film should have been. You know, Ultron should have been more of a threat like what he is here. But yeah, fantastic episode. Really enjoyable. Yeah, what more can I say? So, first spot goes to What If Doctor Strange lost his heart instead of his hands. Now, this is my favourite episode of the lot. I thought the voice acting was fantastic. Benedict Cumberbatch, you know, was brilliant, and the story was so well written. It's probably one of the most heartfelt stories in the MCU. You know, it's such a sort of sad story that that Benedict Cumberbatch's Doctor Strange couldn't save the love of his life. No matter what he tried to do, she kept dying because it was a fixed point. He couldn't go back and change this. Otherwise, the universes would fall apart. And he sort of went down a dark path. But he wasn't evil. He was misguided. He was misunderstood. He was, he'd done bad things for the right reasons and this sort of thing. And ultimately, what he'd done did go on to destroy his universe that he comes from, and he becomes aware of the Watcher within this episode, which was the first time someone had sort of not interacted with the Watcher, but became aware that this the Watcher existed and all this sort of thing. So that was brilliant to see, and that was sort of like a little play on what to expect when we get into the Ultron stuff. The awareness factor that he just that you could be aware of him. Ultimately, the episode ended with a really emotional beat to it, with Doctor Strange just being trapped in like the mirror dimension of his own creating, like almost like a prison, a pocket universe, so to speak, where his entire universe around him was broken down and destroyed, and all that was left was him as one sole survivor, trapped. And having to live out this what he'd done and all this. Fantastic episode, and obviously plays heavily into the season finale, and you come back to this at the very end of the season finale, and so you still get that heartfelt beat at the end of that this Doctor Strange has got to go back and live in prison. He can't get out of that. He is trapped in this, but so. Fantastic episode. So that was my ranking for all of these 9 episodes. Now, I know, like I said, that people are going to think differently, and I'm fine with that because it's my own opinion. And we all have our own opinion. I respect other people's opinion. And it's interesting to hear why other people like episodes over different episodes, whereas I would like that episode over that episode. You know, because we all have our own favourite characters, and you know, the episode would touch us in different ways, this sort of a thing. So from you, I would really like to hear what you think, what your ranking would be for these episodes. Or just tell me your favourite, tell me your least favourite, whatever you want to do. But while you're there, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, come to the channel, subscribe, give me a thumbs up, all that sort of stuff. Don't forget to join me on Facebook. Thing will be at the end, the advert will be at the end for that, you'll see that. And yeah, so thank you for joining me on this journey. Marvel's What If was a fantastic series. I really enjoyed it. I hope you felt the same about it. I can't wait for season 2 in 2022. We should be getting that. Ultimately, it shouldn't be dismissed as part of the Marvel MCU because it's animation. It's probably very easy to do that for someone to say, I'm not going to watch this, but ultimately it should be watched. It is part of it, and hopefully you will see some aspects of this played into the films in the future. Yeah, brilliant stuff. So anyway, thank you for joining me, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care all, and goodbye.